Okay, now I'd like to take a look at the LFO editor. Before we do anything else, I've just quickly set something up in Ableton to look at. You notice that I've mapped my MIDI channel faders to the channel faders in Ableton on the left-hand MIDI pod. It will become apparent later why I've done that. And also I've just mapped some clip start stops so I can launch some audio. Okay, so I'm just coming in on channel 1. I've set my channel 1 to go over to the filter. I'll quickly talk through the filter. I set to high pass. My frequency sweep is down at 20 Hz. If I turn the filter on, there will be no filtering effect at all on the audio. And as I turn my sweep up, you'll hear the filtered. You lose your bass and your mids, and then your upper highs. So basically the filter just removes frequencies from the audio. Now the LFO sets up an envelope based on frequency. So if I turn up the LFO depth, you'll start to hear that the frequency manipulation there. And what I can do is if I tap in, we can get that roughly in time with the music. But you can see this is independent of the frequency sweep, which is still down at 20 Hz. Okay, just turn the filter off for a moment. I'm just going to reset my tap tempo and just make sure we're analysing correctly what's coming in. Okay, so that's the 4D analysing my incoming audio. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lock my LFO tempo to my analysed tempo. So I'm going to hold down the LFO tap tempo button. You'll see the lights appear on the display, and then hit the BPM tap, and that will lock the LFO tempo to the BPM tempo. As we turn up the sweep, you can hear that that's completely synced now from a tempo point of view. Okay, what we can do now is we can go and have a look at the LFO editor. So to enter LFO edit mode, we hold down the LFO tap tempo button, wait for the dots to appear, then we hit the start stop button. And you'll see that the display now says LFO. What we can now do is we can use the faders on the MIDI pods to actually draw in a waveform. So if I pull down my faders, if I take them up to the top, currently you can't hear anything because I've got no depth on my LFO. Okay. So what we've got now is each fader is like the frequency sweep at that particular point in the beat. So I can and then I can double that up. And we can draw in some sine waves to give us a more rounded response. But the point is we can actually draw in the waveform using these faders. One other little trick, if we just come out of LFO edit mode, you'll see that the that particular envelope stays now until I want to actually go in and reset it, which I'll go through in a minute. But what I can do is just tap in every fourth beat. And just make sure that's as close as I can get it. If I hold down the tap tempo button, it'll tell me that I'm actually on 32, which is where I need to be, but you can just jog it one way or the other using the jog switch. Basically what's happening now is my LFO tempo is running at a quarter of the speed of my BPM, and this loop's running in 4/4, so that means that the envelope runs over an entire bar. So what I can start to do now is try and isolate and find the beats. So what I need to do is go into my LFO edit mode, drag all my faders down, 3. So you can hear now that I'm attempting to filter out beat 1 in the bar. So I can also do that to beat 3. Because my envelope is running over the period of 1 bar, and again we can get some really interesting effects going on just by playing with the faders. Okay, now if you want to reset the LFO envelope to its original position, we just come out of LFO edit mode by pressing the start button, hold down the LFO tab tempo, then hold down the start stop. You will see RST appears. That has now reset my filter to be the standard filter waveform. And that's how you use the LFO editor. Now, at the very beginning of the presentation I pointed out that I'd moved all my fader positions. And if you can see, now in Ableton, all the faders are right at the top. On the 4D, all the faders are right at the bottom. Now, obviously, if you're using your LFO editor live, this could cause a bit of a problem. So we have a fader pickup algorithm written into the software, which means that now, if you watch, I'm moving my very left-hand fader in Ableton. I've got to go up and I've got to physically get the control. You can hear it affecting the volume. Okay, so we don't get any nasty jumps. If you watch channel 2, I go and pick up the 3rd level and bring it back. So this pickup algorithm stops any nasty surprises with MIDI values jumping around all over the place based on where the controls are.